Okay, so here's my sample of the flipped classroom in regards to world history. I came up with this as kind of an overview for the class, so something they can have hard copy in their laptops, iPads, or smartphones in case they had any questions, or the parents had questions. So what I wanted to show them is, again, an outline of the whole semester, and I broke it up into 4 quarters. Quarter one, I started off with the question that they need to know, remember, and write a nice paper on and know the ins and outs of the facts that include this question. So for the essential question in part one, I want them to answer: how did European conquest of North America transform indigenous civilizations, institutionalize African slavery, and ultimately lead to the independent and democratic United States? Very big question to answer, but what I want to do is give them a premise of what we're going to cover in this unit. So here's the 4 units we're going to cover in regards to that question. We're going to cover the indigenous people of North America, worlds converge, American Revolution, and the foundations of the American government and nation. So when we go over those in the class, we should be able to answer that essential question in part one. Now quarter two, the question is going to be, in what ways was the Civil War inevitable? The units we're going to cover to answer that question include Western expansion, innovations and inventions, early reform movements, causes of the Civil War, and the Civil War and Reconstruction. So a lot of information in those units to answer that question. Moving on to our next quarter. Quarter three. The question states, what role did industrial capitalism play in American life in the United States' rise as a world power? So again, leads us to the units we're going to cover: industrialization and immigration, imperialism and World War I, and the 20s and 30s. Quarter four. How have post-war social, political, and economic forces changed the United States internally and in its relationships with the rest of the world? It leads us to our last units that we're going to cover that include World War II, the Cold War era, the Rights Revolution, Vietnam and its aftermath, and contemporary America. So that should lead us to the end of our semester, broken up into 4 quarters. So what I'd like them to do is pay close attention to these questions, because they could, and I capitalized could, or bolded could, because ultimately I would put these questions on the test, and they need to know the ins and outs of those questions and backed up with a lot of facts. Now, when I did this sample flipped classroom, I also thought of myself actually incorporating the syllabus in the same way so that the kids could have a hard copy. So for me right now, I just did a whole overview of what we're going to cover in case they had a question or what units they need to pertain to. But ultimately, I would like to use a syllabus so that they always can refer back to. Yes, we always get a hard copy in the classroom, but this would be perfect so they can draw it up anywhere they're at, library, a friend's house or whatnot, but they always have a hard copy via their iPad or smartphone. So I think this is a wonderful tool for students to always know what is going on and what's expected so that we don't waste class time going over it again. So there's my flipped classroom. Thank you.